Bienvenue. Welcome back. Mike was just telling us that he's worked in the Sahara in 50-degree
Oh,
heat and found it extremely unpleasant. He was asking, how is Paris going to cope with that heat dome? Uh,
mm. The main idea is that we don't reach that heat, and that we adapt the city before arriving. But it's just a personal point of view, but what was really incredible is that through this experience, it was something really immersive. So they did implement a kind of a track where people went in and experienced how living at 50 degrees was, and they really communicate a lot around. And it also, I hope, the give citizens that it's urgent to act, and that one way of acting is adapting the city through green infrastructure. And also, this experiment is kind of a result of long time research on Paris. And so there are different scenarios that have been experimented. And one of them is also like if there were a rise of flood of the sand, etc., etc. And all those research were shared with the public in the Pavillon de l'Arsenal into an exhibition. And the Pavillon de l'Arsenal is a place focused on urbanism and also adaptation of climate change. So so all the background they used to create these scenarios and all the strategy that came from those scenarios are detailed and accessible, I would say, online. If this answers your question.
wow. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Liz Mills, who's put her hand up. Liz, could you turn on your camera and unmute yourself? And
Is that okay? Yeah, hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hello. Leah, I think you said that you had a target to unseal more than 40% of the land area by 2030? Was that right? And if so, do you have a map? Has Paris made a map of the sealed and unsealed area? And I'd like to ask what the current position is in policy in Wales, in Planning Policy Wales, the main policy document. I think there used to be some policy in there saying, please don't seal all the surfaces or unseal as much as possible. Like, what's current policy and practice in Wales on unsealing?
I think we'll ask about Paris first of all.
Yeah.
Do you have that map of unsealed surfaces?
We do have a strategic plan, which is the rainwater plan that is currently re actualized. So we do have the map of out an estimated map. It's not so much precise of what's going on, but it's also a lot focused on places where we can still construct, build, or the renewal of urban spaces, I would say. But I can send you the rainwater plan if you want, and it's in French, but you might have some maps and maybe infos on this strategy.
I think it's very interesting for local authorities, municipalities to know that such maps exist, really. So I'm not sure how common it is across the rest of Europe for local authorities to produce these maps, but I think more of them are doing it.
And to follow up on the point about planning policy Wales uh, and unsealed surfaces, as you know, every new development in Wales has to have sustainable drainage systems, and that implies providing biodiversity and amenity benefits. And there's a strong policy towards keeping the water on the surface to keeping the surfaces unsealed. That's separate to planning legislation. But in terms of mapping, we're very fortunate that we have the Ordnance Survey. And if you go into the Ordnance Survey master map, if you have access to that, then it's not that difficult to pick out unsealed surfaces. So it would be possible to produce an unsealed surfaces map of Wales. And that's something that I'll be seeing if we can make more easily available in the future. I wonder if anybody
Thanks.
else on the call has a question for Leah, because we'll be running out of time. It's 13 minutes to 11, and I did promise I'd release Leah at 11 o'clock. Oh, Deb Hill from Swansea, you've got a question. Could you unmute yourself and turn your camera on and ask
Yeah,
your
I, I,
question?
I'm unmuted, but my camera's not set up at the moment. Sorry, Pete. But yeah, I'm just wondering. It's fantastic what you're doing there, and yeah, really inspiring. I just wondered about, are there issues around increased risk of fire with more kind of vegetation being planted in and around dense urban areas, especially when you do get drought and high temperatures? And if, has that been considered? And if so, are there particular species, like you would avoid planting, or have you got a palette of planting that is likely to be more resistant to fire risk?
Um, like for the species part, I would say that I'm not aware of, but no, we don't go into this detail on the fire risk. However, it's huge discussion between the different departments of the city of Paris, and especially with fire workers. No, fire.
Les sapeurs-pompiers, no?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the
But
fire and rescue services, I think that would translate
fire
to in the UK.
fire rescue services and the city, and also all the um, administration in charge of the safety of Paris. So when we do implement, for instance, alignment 3, we have regulation on the distance between the tree planting and the building,
Mm-hmm.
mostly for accessing the building, but also, I would say, disconnecting a little bit the building from the vegetation. But this is due for public space. However, within the the building, or like the surrounding of the building, we really want to have this link between the soil and the roof through greening the building. So we do take into account the fire risk, but I don't think we are going too far on this fire risk.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I guess, yeah, I mean, that might become more of a concern and influence choice of species, but and keeping, I guess it's keeping those areas as wet as possible as well, isn't it? Retaining moisture in the soil within those spaces, which looks like that's what you're doing. More little ponds and streams and things, perhaps. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, that's great.
Yeah, I think this is a discussion which we might have at a future webinar. I'm currently discussing things with friends in the San Francisco Bay area, which is a fog-dominated ecosystem, but a Mediterranean climate. And there is a city ordinance which is now getting people to clear all vegetation within a certain distance of their homes. But as Deb indicated, if I was to say in a non-Mediterranean ecosystem, then I think the first thing to do is to maintain the overall humidity, which means nature-based solutions, sustainable drainage systems for dealing with surface water, to keep the air humidity up, to make sure the vegetation is appropriate. So, for instance, deciduous trees like the ones in the background behind me, rather than evergreen trees, which produce a lot of volatile organic compounds which catch fire very easily.
Absolutely.
And then if a heat wave is imminent and you have a lot of, for example, dead grass, then a warning to citizens to go out and to cut those down. So first of all, you're trying to do what Paris is doing, which is to maintain a good, cool climate, um, higher levels of humidity, appropriate vegetation, and then to have the citizenry prepared to take emergency action if there has been a prolonged drought and there's a lot of fuel. But as I say, this is something for another webinar for the Green Infrastructure Forum. I've given Léa a chance to have a quick breather and hopefully to relax for a few seconds. I wonder if anybody else has any further questions for Léa, as our time is running very short. If no one does for the moment, then in Wales, we've implemented a 30 kilometre per hour, 20 mile an hour speed limit in our urban areas. And that's caused a lot of drivers to get very angry. But it has reduced their insurance premiums because they're getting fewer accidents. And it has been proven to save lives and to save injuries. How did Paris cope with the backlash from drivers when you closed streets around schools to cars?
Yes, it was a really big backlash, but school streets were part of the problem, but the main backlash was on the border of the scene, that were only for cars. It was kind of a local highway for Paris. So when they closed it to cars, the mayor faced many criticism, and one of them was this these riverbanks would be like totally abundant and no one would go. But what we witness today is that it's one of the public space that is the most crowded, especially in summer. So I would say that the mayor is really proud of this action, and that was also a turning point on how we want to reduce car from the city and how we implemented strategy in order to have limited car access. But this also goes in lines with a redefinition of all the transportation system, and by making public transport more well related and also more accessible to everyone. Because what we witness is that most of the cars come from outside the city, and that Parisians do not have many cars, but people outside the city commute to Paris. So it's also really important for them to get easily to Paris. So the public transport is now an issue, but we do have great strategy and great construction sites implemented in order to have new subway lines. And we do extend one of our lines for the Olympic Games, and that really linked a city that have many people commuting into Paris with a really high-speed subway, for instance. So you do have to compensate if you want to reduce cars in the city.
I think that's a fantastic example for us here in Wales. Mike's asking, has participatory budgeting been successful in Paris? Léa, qu'est-ce que tu penses?
I think that participative budget is a really important and efficient tool for the city, as it represents 5% of the budget. But for really the strategy of redesigning public space, I would say that the most important tool was the embellish your neighborhood tool, and because this really allow all the project designer of the city to really have the time to discuss with the citizens and to focus on special area with knowing and communicating about all of the technical constraints and boundaries. So I would say this kind of action was really, really impactful in Paris. And now more and more districts are being renewed and accepted by the citizens.
Merci. Deb, I think this is going to be the last question. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Pete, and thanks, Léa. Just wondering, you touched on it in your presentation, but I wondered if you had been recording and monitoring increases in biodiversity through all the greening work that you're doing, and whether there's an involvement of local people in that process in citizen science recording. Just wonder if have you got figures to say, yeah, for sure that there's been an increase in species because of the work that you've been doing?
Mm-hmm. I would say that we have specific strategy for flora and a different one for fauna. For flora in our design, we really think on how to include regional species into our project in order to adapt a really diverse range of plants into our design, and also to have a really living and diverse ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we do monitor also, but the assessment, I would say, is ongoing on how regional species have an impact on the biodiversity. So this would be the first point. The second point is about fauna. Fauna is more difficult to trace
Yeah.
in Paris, and so there are a different kind of strategy. We have experts that are monitoring some species, but not all. And we do use citizen science, but more as, I would say, now as a communicating tool in order for people to know more about their environment. For instance, we have the Sparrow neighborhood, and this is an initiative where people can hear the birds, and this is really important in the relation between city and nature. But this is what the city does. But we also have a specific institution that map all the species and that really dedicates all its work to the flora and fauna identification. It's the Museum of National and Natural History.
Great, no, thank you. That sounds great. And I guess there probably other bits like putting up nest boxes, bird boxes, bat boxes, and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something we're looking at in Swansea, where we've been doing citizen science in the city centre, and we've got a target to increase biodiversity, and we need to establish a baseline and see what we can do to bring more wildlife and more nature back in. So that's really inspiring to hear what you've been doing. Thank you.
And it's now gone 11 o'clock, so I must release Léa now and release everyone else to get onto their busy schedule. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Merci beaucoup encore, Léa. That was fantastic. That's going to give us a lot to think about, and I hope that cities in Wales will now start to emulate some of the things that Paris is doing. Merci beaucoup.
Oh, thank you a lot for your invitation, and all the questions were also truly inspiring in how we can have a better strategy and implement, I don't know, many different actions. So thank you so much. And don't hesitate also to reach me if you have further questions, or if you want maybe more detailed information on some points. I would be happy to answer. So thank you so much for the invitation. It was a real pleasure.
That is wonderful. Okay. Au revoir tout le monde.
Au revoir.
Goodbye.